I can only, in my own tracing of the records, discover that on one or two occasions was it ever suggested that the minority population suffered discrimination. In fact, I would say that the account given of Northern Ireland society in the Cameron report, which followed the immediate outbreak of the Troubles, was such that as to reveal to the total population elements of a situation which was unknown to many of them.
The media was not alone. By the convention of some 40 years, Westminster rarely discussed the province's internal affairs. Yet Parliament had the final authority and responsibility for Northern Ireland.
Well, it was virtually impossible to raise about 9/10 of the issues. Anything that had been devolved upon the Government of Ireland under the Government of Ireland Act that could not be raised on the floor of the House of Commons. And all the things that we really wanted to raise, all the grievances, just could not be raised. The Speaker would immediately rule you out of order. And the only thing I remember very clearly was Hugh de Largy, who was one of the few MPs interested in Northern Ireland, standing up and saying, "Mr. Speaker, what else can we raise except for the question of Harland and Wolff?"
The province had serious economic problems. Its main industries, shipbuilding and textiles, were depressed. Unemployment was high. With the economy needing reshaping, it made sense to cooperate with the Dublin government. But Protestants were alarmed when O'Neill invited Sean Lemass, the Irish Prime Minister, to Belfast in 1965. For over 40 years, the South, devoutly Catholic, had been hostile to the North. Its constitution not only laid claim to sovereignty over the North, but also enshrined Catholic theology. Protestant apprehensions increased when the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church met in Belfast in June 1966 to discuss closer ties with other churches. Some Ulster Protestants, particularly the fundamentalist Free Presbyterian Church, saw in these talks the danger of a Romeward trend and the erosion of Protestant values. Their leader was Ian Paisley. When this Protestant demonstration passed through a Roman Catholic district, Crommack Square, sectarian fighting broke out. Paisley was later charged with illegal assembly. But 1966 was also a year of anniversaries. 50 years before, thousands of Ulster men had been slaughtered at the Battle of the Somme. Protestants remember that sacrifice for Britain. But 1916 had seen another great event in Irish history remembered by Catholics. The Easter Rising in Dublin, which had set the South on the road to independence. Sectarian tension mounted when Protestant paramilitaries killed 2 Catholics. O'Neill voiced his fears.
In my opinion, brethren, the one way to endanger our Constitution is by violence, and by abuse, and by the gun. We live, ladies and gentlemen, in a changing world, and we must defend our Constitution and our Ulster heritage in a modern way. Nor is it necessary to do this kind of thing in order to be a true loyalist.
The Paisleyites opposed O'Neill's reforms simply because of the fact that they felt that he had not only compromised, but he had sold out on the constitutional position. Particularly in the middle 60s, when he went down south to meet with the Prime Minister of Dublin, and then he had the Prime Minister of Eire on an official visit to Belfast, to Stormont. And this they saw as a threat to their constitutional position, that some deal was going to be made with Dublin, and that Northern Ireland was going to be annexed into some arrangement with Dublin. And Paisley and the Paisleyites at that time felt that the best way to protect themselves was to attack the man who was making these reforms.
We want to show that this country is not a democratic country, but this country has been run by a group of dictators from Glengall Street.
Glengall Street housed the headquarters of O'Neill's Unionist party.
And for years these men have tried to tell the Protestants of Ulster that they're loyal and they're true blues, but we have found them out now. They've been found out. The hidden things of darkness are being exposed in the light and in the focus of truth. God be with you till we meet.
Paisley was about to go to jail, having refused to be bound over for his part in the Crummock Square riot. But there was also disquiet about O'Neill in the inner councils of the Unionist party.
Prime Minister, would you care to comment on the meeting?
No, very, very happy meeting, very successful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Any criticism at all, Prime Minister?
No, very happy.
O'Neill was finding Northern Ireland unreceptive to economic and social reform. The Unionist chief whip was James Chichester Clark.
And I think there's a certain feeling that perhaps the Unionist party have gone soft on firm Unionist principles. Nothing could be further from the truth, but these are based on a good many misconceptions that are being spread. They're based on things like the Easter Rising, the mass meeting, perhaps the ecumenical movement, all of which, although not directly, or many of which not directly affecting the government, are sometimes tied around the government's neck.
Now, when Protestants marched, they were worried by what O'Neill's liberal attitudes might unleash. Ian Paisley articulated their fears.
I'm a free-born Protestant, and all the intimidation, and all the slander, and all the lying about me will not stop me in my campaign in Ulster to keep Ulster out of the south of Ireland.
O'Neill's attempt to modernise Northern Ireland society was unleashing raw forces on his political right, but from the left he faced a demand for civil rights. During the 60s, there was an increasing number of radical groups of mostly, but not entirely, Catholics campaigning for social justice in the north. By 1968, they'd begun to consider direct action of a kind that was fashionable at the time. In Caledon, County Tyrone, a badly housed Catholic family was squatted here and evicted in front of television cameras. The house had been allocated by the Unionist Council to a young single Protestant woman. A Catholic Nationalist MP who had organised the squat spoke to Ulster Television.
Well, I've drawn attention, I might say, highlighted the situation. It's a form of non-violent protest, which I felt was necessary, considering that I'd used every parliamentary strategy possible to remedy this injustice, and I give no assurance that in the future that I will not resort to similar activities in order to highlight the position.
Social forces long at work in the Catholic community were about to erupt.
The generation of the early 60s was one which had not participated to the same extent in the defeats of previous periods and which had grown up completely within the state. So they weren't as demoralized or defeatist as their parents were. Another factor was the increasing availability of education as a result of the post-war Education Acts and so on, which brought a lot of the Catholic population into secondary education and third-level education for the first time.